to recognize the enormity of the terrible tragedy that took place over this past weekend in Orlando. We extend our prayers to the families of the victims, the LGBT community, and all Americans. Okay, so this year marks the first time that there's been an open seat in this congressional district for 72 years. Isn't that astounding? 72 years. Amazing. And I'm Beth Finkel, and I'm the state director for AARP New York. Many of you, I think, know we've got 38 million members nationally, and right here in the great state of New York, we have 2.6 million members of people 50 plus. And AARP has a great stake in this election, and that's why we have convened everybody here tonight. AARP is a nonpartisan social mission organization that neither contributes to nor endorses political candidates. So why are we here? Why is this so important to AARP? Because Social Security needs to be front and center in this election. It's a promise that has been kept for generations. Americans pay into Social Security. You have all paid into Social Security, and we all deserve to get the benefits that we've earned, that we've put into Social Security over the years. But to keep that promise to future generations, Social Security needs to be updated for the 21st century. If our leaders don't act, future retirees could lose up to 25% of their benefits each year. Every year that our leaders wait, finding a solution is going to grow harder and harder. Anyone who wants to be elected to Congress should be able to tell voters where they stand on keeping Social Security strong. And that's why AARP is here tonight, pressing the candidates to take a stand and lay out their ideas on how to update Social Security so that it's financially sound with adequate benefits. And that's why we're here tonight, to hear what the next representative to the 13th Congressional District has to say about Social Security. You know, in this district, there are over 104,000 beneficiaries to Social Security. And that's what makes Social Security solvency even more critical in this particular election, at this particular place, and at this particular time. So that's why the 50 plus will be paying very close attention. And make no mistake, we know who's the most likely to vote, right? The 50 plus accounted for over 60% of the voters in the last gubernatorial election here in New York State. And in fact, in the last mayoral election, they were the biggest single voting bloc to elect the last mayor of New York City. So it stands to reason that the 50 plus will determine the outcome of this race also. So are you ready? Because here we go. We are pleased to be joined tonight's debate by 6 really amazing media sponsors. They are the pillars to our community. They are trusted sources of news. We've got the Amsterdam News. We've got El Diario. We've got WXTV, Univision 41. We've got Univision Radio, Watto AM. We've got WABC TV, and we've got WBLS 107.5 FM. And I'd like to welcome and introduce our moderators. Sandra Bookman, she's worked for WABC TV since 1998. Prior to that, she covered Nelson Mandela's release from prison in South Africa in 1990, and she has won numerous Emmys for her work, including her coverage of the Olympics. Then we've got Mary Joelle Duran. She's a native of the Dominican Republic who has spent some formative years in Puerto Rico and has been the WXTV Univision 41 since 1999. And we've got Bob Slade of WBLS. He's a native of Harlem, a veteran of 45 years in radio news business, and the winner of numerous awards for his work. And they will introduce the issues. And then asking specific questions will be Josh Barker, a reporter for the Amsterdam News since 2007, co-host and commentator for WBLS and WLIB, and Ana Nieto of El Diario, who has worked for various media in Spain, and she holds a law degree and a master's degree in journalism from the University of Madrid. So I'd like to welcome the candidates and really thank all of you for participating, and to go over the ground rules for tonight's debate and to introduce the candidates in order of their opening statements. I give you your moderators, starting with Sandra Bookman from WABC-TV.
Thank you, Beth, and good evening, everyone. Mary Joelle, Bob, and I will lay out the ground rules for tonight's debate. There were 2 number draws prior to the event. One determined where each candidate is sitting at the dais, the order of opening statements, and the order of response to the first question. The second draw determined the order of the closing statements. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Good evening, my name is Mary Joelle Duran from Univision, and I will continue with second set of the rules. Approximately 80% of the questions will come from the panel, and approximately 20% will come from the audience. Audience questions were pre-selected and will be asked by the moderators. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer questions asked by the panel. Time permitting, the moderators may ask additional pre-selected questions from the audience before the candidates provide their closing statements.
I'm Bob Slade, and a good day to you. Each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. No props or written materials are allowed on the set. Each candidate has been supplied with a blank pad and pens. I hope you've got those pens with you now, all right? And those are the ground rules. Now it's time to begin the debate. Let's begin with the candidates' opening remarks, starting with the first candidate as determined by our number draw. And that first candidate is Clyde Williams.
Well, let me start off by saying good evening and thank you for having me here tonight. When I was 8 years old, I used to go downtown and pay my mother's bills. And I remember before my mother would let me leave the house, she would take a safety pin and she would take that electric bill and the money to pay it and put it inside my pocket so I wouldn't lose it. It was a great day for me when she did that because it gave me the ability to make certain my mother did one less thing every single day. And what it taught me was a great deal about responsibility. It made me realize how vulnerable people were every single day in order to make ends meet. And it's part of the reason why I'm very concerned about public policy. And I've been working on public policy for more than 20 years for President Clinton and for President Obama. But I'm very concerned about our community. I'm concerned because more than a third of the people that live in our congressional district have been living in poverty for decades. I'm very concerned because 71% of the children that live in East Harlem, again, have been living in poverty for decades. I'm very concerned because we have long-term residents that have lived in our community for 40, 30, and 20 years that are being pushed out every single day because of escalating rents that are sometimes more than 90% in a 10-year period. And so on June 28th, you have a decision to make. You can stick with the politics of old, career politicians that have represented you for decades in Albany, people who have been stuck in the past, people who have brought us corruption, incompetence, and mismanagement. You have the ability on June 28th to elect someone that is more concerned about your needs and your concerns than special interest group. Someone who will not play regional politics, someone who will not play racial politics, someone who will not play ethnic politics, and do what's in the best interest of everyone in our congressional district. If you listen to the things that I talked about, if you think that's success, having all those negative things and that kind of poverty in our community, then you have several people to vote for. But if you want somebody who's going to do something compellingly different on day one, that can go to Washington, D.C., know what they're doing, that can make a profound difference in your life, then I ask you to vote for me on June 28th. Visit my website, ClydeWilliams2016.com, and see what real ideas are for change in our community. Thank you.
Our next opening statement will be from Guillermo Lunares.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the sponsor. Good evening, everyone, for organizing this event. I am running for Congress because I believe that the communities in this district face the biggest challenge ever, and that of displacement. And those most in danger are the most vulnerable, the seniors, working families, and those who are struggling and have been in this community for the last 30, 40, 50 years. I am running because I have the experience having served as an advocate for education, public education, and an advocate for immigrants, but also an advocate for communities and bringing communities together. For 40 years, I've been serving the Northern Manhattan communities. As a teacher, I was a member of the city of the school board. I was a member of the city council. I was also commissioner of immigrant affairs, representing all immigrants in the city of New York. I am now the assemblyman. I served with President Clinton on education on a national level. But I believe that the most important thing that these communities need in this district is someone that has the experience having worked in the city, in the executive and legislative level, in the state level, at the federal level, but more so bringing people together to face the challenges that they have had in education and with the wave of crime we have in Washington Heights. We need to mobilize our community to have Washington pay attention to the needs that we have, especially the seniors, the families that are about to be thrown out of the community, and they're already, this process is on. I want to run on the 28th. I hope I can count on your support, because I believe that unless we unite the entire district and all communities, no one will listen to us. I've done that in the city at the state level, and I'm prepared to do it in Washington. I ask for your support this June 28th to send a strong voice to Washington.
Thank you. And now our third.
Good evening. My name is Senator Adriano Espaillat. I run for this job as an immigrant who came to this country 51 years without paper. As a young student who sat in the back of the classroom without knowing a word of English. As a young man that fought to fight drugs when we had the drug wars in Washington Heights. As a tenant organizer that fought to organize tenants across the district when they were facing unscrupulous landlords. As someone that fought to build 16 new schools in Northern Manhattan. As an assembly member and a senator that passed 77 bills in the state legislature. But now we are going to turn the page. Finally, after 70 plus years, we're turning the page, and we have a whole set of issues. We have jobs. We have education and housing, critical issues that are impacting all of our families. And I'm running to work with you to resolve those issues. My experience will help us get there. Yo me estoy postulando como senador, primero como emigrante, segundo como un organizador de inquilinos, tercero como una persona que combatió la droga en el Alto Manhattan, como un legislador que aprobó 77 proyectos de leyes. Y ahora tenemos otros problemas que juntos podemos resolverlo. El problema de empleos, el problema de vivienda, el problema de educación. Cosas que afectan diariamente a nuestras familias, a todas las familias. So if you are an Albanian that lives in Norwood, vote for Espaillat. If you are a Bangladeshi that lives in the northwest side of the Bronx, vote for Espaillat. If you are a West African immigrant from also the Bronx, you can consider Espaillat. If you're a Russian Jew from Washington Heights, or a Senegalese from East Harlem, an African American, a Puerto Rican, a Dominican, this is one district for all of us. Thank you so much.
All right, here we go. Candidate number 4, Tony Evans.
My name is Tony Evans. I'm an attorney in private practice in Harlem for the last 8 or 9 years. Before that, I spent almost 20 years on Wall Street working in the international corporate markets. That's okay, because I'm a Republican and I stand here because I believe that that's all right. That's fine if you want to boo that label, but if you're not going to let me speak, then we could stop. Because the point is, you as a community and we as a group have relentlessly given support to one party. The party that controls this state and the party that controls this city has stood by and made signs and picketed outside homes and shelters while they've passed laws and allowed corruption that cost us money. We can't afford the government we have, and now to get elected as the Democratic representative, there's months and months of pandering. We need people with specific skills. As an attorney, I start out in this position every day. People come into my office already been charged, already been shamed, already been convinced that what they should do is give in to the government, whether it's the federal government or the state government. I've represented business people, families, single mothers. I've represented people in immigration removal proceedings. I've watched how this system works and how it doesn't work for us unless we have a voice. What an advocate does is stand up and hold fast when everybody else is going in the popular direction. And we need a congressperson who will go and stand on the floor of the 115th Congress and say that I'm here for all of the citizens of the 13th District, and we need to be heard, and our issues need to be elevated. And I don't care what party the people in control are, an advocate stands there until his people have been heard from. Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next candidate, opening remarks.
Hi, good evening. My name is Johanny Caceres. As a single mother and business owner, I know the priorities that we have in the community. A lot of businesses are closing because of the money being taken to something else. I've been in business for 17 years. I know how it is, how hard it is for a single mother of 2. And I'm here for you guys. I'm here to speak out for you. Para toda aquella mujer que necesite tener un voto, hablar por nosotras, aquí estoy yo para luchar por ustedes, para representarlo en el Congreso. Tengo 2 niños, los cuales he luchado por ellos sola, lo he sacado adelante sola. Creo que necesitamos pelear por nosotros, porque el seguro social se mantenga, que no sean cortados, para que no sean los negocios cerrados, para que haya vivienda factible para todas las madres solteras y madres aquellas que no tengan una persona que nos representen. Estoy aquí para pelear por todos nosotros. Si van a votar por alguien, voten por mí. Sé que haría un buen trabajo. Me he dedicado toda mi vida, mi juventud, a mi negocio. Y he sabido decir y he sabido luchar. He tenido puertas cerradas y le he abierto. Voten por mí.
Our 6th candidate, Adam Clayton Powell, 4th.
Good evening. My name is Adam Clayton Powell, and I'm ready to be your next congressman. This district has a rich history of progressive activism for 72 years. It was a man I'm proud to call my father who in 1944 became our first congressman. Not only the black congressman from Harlem, but he was a black congressman for the United States. Truly led many of us for 26 years. He wrote the blueprint for social justice and political activism in this nation to this day. And he was succeeded by Charlie Rangel, who's had a stellar career in 46 years. And now in just 15 days, all of that will change. I've been a fighter all my life. I was in the city council and fought to improve the education of our young kids by bringing state-of-the-art computer labs. I went to the White House and fought for the release of the Puerto Rican political prisoners, and we got them released. I went to Albany and fought to raise the minimum wage by joining a group of progressive labor and clergy, and we raised the minimum wage. that in my first term in Albany, I fought to improve the quality of life for our seniors by passing SCREE, the Senior Citizen Rent Increase Exemption. That was my bill in 2002, which prevents seniors from just that, from receiving a rent increase. And I fought to open the Borinquen Health Center, at least to move them to a better location on 123rd Street and 3rd Avenue. I've been a fighter all my life, and if you send me to Congress in 15 days, I'm gonna fight for you. I'm gonna fight to preserve Social Security, the best government program that's ever been a part of our country. I'm gonna fight to make sure that we have affordable housing. I'm not a part of the political machine, so you can count on me. You don't have to belong to a political club. You don't have to have a title to speak to me. I will listen, and send me to Congress and I will fight for you. Familia, mi nombre es Adam Clayton Powell y estoy ready para ser su próximo congresista. He estado luchando toda mi vida en el Consejo Municipal, en la Asamblea Estatal, por la ley SCREE que yo pasé, por ayudar a nuestra juventud a tener computadoras en sus hogares. Por Vieques, yo fui a la isla de Vieques, Puerto Rico, y luchamos para sacar la marina más poderosa del mundo. Y fui encarcelado por eso.
Time is
Y si
up.
usted me elige, seré su próximo congresista y
Remember the
seguiremos
rules.
luchando. Gracias, familia, que Dios los bendiga. Thank you,
you.
God bless you.
All right, candidate number 7, Keith Wright.
Good evening, good evening. I'm Keith Wright, and I know that we all stand here with the people of Orlando. I am probably one of the most fortunate persons on this table, at this table. I'm the son of 2 public servants. My mother, a 96-year-old retired teacher and principal who's still living and still treats me as if I'm 11 years old, but also I am indeed a caregiver of hers. My father was a lawyer and a judge, and he even had a nickname. They called him Turn 'em Loose Bruce. So I have been in the legislature for the past 23 years, and I've been a part of some of the most groundbreaking pieces of legislation. I was the second name on the bill to repeal the Rockefeller drug laws. I was the author of the bill to up the minimum wage with indexing. I'm also the prime author of the bill to create a domestic workers' bill of rights. Those folks that work as nannies and caregivers, those folks have been abused over the years, now primarily immigrant women. My grandparents were domestic workers. Now they're able to have a day off, they're able to have a raise in pay, able to have vacation and sick time. So we have many issues facing us in this country, but I just want to say that I too was the author of the SCREE bill to up the income level if you make $50,000 or less. $50,000 or less, and you're part of the SCREE, your rent can't go up. Many issues facing us. Affordable housing, number 1. More senior housing, number 2. What will I do when I get to Congress? I will get rid and reconfigure the AMI. Number 2, we must have paid family leave across this nation. We have it in New York, but we have family leave in the federal government, but we don't have paid family leave. Listen, the student debt crisis is crippling our future generations. Elections are about the future. So I ask for you, we are the most diverse congressional district in this country. We're black, we're Puerto Rican, we're white, we're Jews, we're just everybody. So this is all I've ever done throughout my whole political life and governmental life. So I ask on June 28th, come out and vote. Thank you so much.
Sam Sloan, your opening remarks.
Yeah, my name is Sam Sloan. Anybody who's a rated tournament chess player probably knows my name. I have published more than 700 books, primarily books about mathematics, history, and chess. I'm best known for arguing orally before the United States Supreme Court, where I defeated the United States Security Exchange Commission 9-0 by Supreme Court decision. I'm the last non-lawyer ever to argue before the United States Supreme Court orally. If elected to Congress, my main and persistent demand and goal will be the withdrawal of all U.S. troops from foreign countries that are fighting in the Middle East, especially Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, all those countries, Iran, all those countries over there where you're fighting. Bring the troops home. I have 3 of my own children over there, by the way, who've been over there. My daughter was 4 years in the war in Iraq. She joined the United States Marines. I have another son who joined the United States Marines. He also went over there. I have a third son who's in the United States Army. He's over there now. I'm going to bring all our troops home. Not only my children, but everybody's children are going to come back here because I will not allow our troops to be fighting over there, and I will also not allow our president to drop any bombs over there. He thinks that he can just drop bombs all over the place and kill a whole bunch of innocent villagers, and then everybody be okay because we're not killing our own people, we're just killing their people. So apparently you don't like this idea, but that's my goal, to get to get us out of wars in the Middle East, stop fighting foreign wars. We do need to keep troops in South Korea to keep the North Koreans from attacking, but other than that, we don't need to have our troops over there. Now, on the big issues, I'm in agreement with our president on most big issues. Our president did the right thing to reestablish diplomatic relations with Cuba. Number two, our president did the right things to make a nuclear deal with Iran because that was their money. We didn't give them any money. They had their money, and they just couldn't use it. That was the problem. Number three, the Trans-Pacific Pipeline is a good deal. Number four, the Gulf Pipeline to Canada, from Canada to the Gulf, is a good deal. All these deals are good. Some of the bad things our president did, he blocked the...
Your time is up.
I don't think it's 2 minutes.
It's 2 minutes.
Thank you. Now our next candidate, Susan Johnson Cook.
Good evening. I'm Ambassador Susan Johnson Cook, and my condolences also for Orlando and for all the mothers and fathers who have to bury their children quite too early. Who am I? I am the daughter of Dorothy C. Johnson and Wilbur T. Johnson, who worked in this district as public servants. I am a daughter of this district. Who am I? The sister of Charles Ronald Johnson, the first African-American assemblyman in the Bronx. Who am I? I'm one who stands on the shoulders of Shirley Chisholm and Barbara Jordan, the first African-American woman in Congress, and Barbara Jordan, the legendary lioness, and I hope to walk in their footsteps. Who am I? I'm the mother of 2 sons, and their Black Lives Matter. And I am a candidate for the 13th Congressional District of this wonderful United States. Twice I was summoned by presidents of the United States to work at the White House, with President Bill Clinton, with President Obama, and with the first female nominee for President of the United States, Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton. I was the first and female New York City Police Department chaplains on the front lines of 9/11. I fought for them, and I'll be on the front lines for you. Who am I? I'm one that cares about Social Security because it hasn't been secure for us. Who am I? I'm one who understands that this position is not anointed. Who says someone is supposed to get it just because of their birthright? It's my time and it's my turn. I am one that cares about paid family leave, gender equality, one who cares about credit care for caregivers, and expanding Social Security. Who am I? I'm Susan Johnson Cook, who knows Washington Heights and Washington, D.C., Harlem and the Hill, Capitol Hill, and also all of the things that we need to put a cap on. Who am I? I'm Susan Johnson Cook, Susan with a Z, so you remember me. And I am the bomb, and I approve of this message. Thank you very much.
And finally, Michael Gallagher.
I'm Mike Gallagher, and I'm here today because politicians in Albany and Washington are not representing us. It's as simple as that. Almost 13 years ago, I left my job in computer systems to stay at home with my now 4 children in Washington Heights. You may think, and people will say to you, that you need to vote for somebody with more experience. So let's talk about experience as it relates to this. Experienced politicians have brought us to this place in time now. Experienced politicians now, where we have a $100 million apartment sitting atop a building on 57th Street, which will pay less taxes than a Harlem brownstone, and will do so for years, directly as a result of actions taken on the Housing Committee, which is led by a candidate here with deep financial ties to the real estate business. Now we have an experienced legislator who missed 1,400 votes in Albany and claims to be taking the position of labor while pocketing donations from management. This is not experience, it's constituent abuse. Our political system favors the wealthy and the connected, and the others running in this race represent that. These experienced politicians aren't doing their jobs, and they're not telling you the truth. My opponents repeatedly say they will rescue public housing in New York with money from the federal government. It's not going to happen. Ask Charles Rangel. City and state subsidies for public housing have completely disappeared, while experienced politicians did nothing. Ask Shola Olateye. We can't wait for help that isn't coming. A real answer to housing problems in New York is a federal tax credit for renters like homeowners get. It will put money in our pockets Tax reform is coming. We need to make sure the benefits don't only go to rich people. We live in a place and time where property is more valued than people, and that needs to change. Voting for the familiar is an option, but you already know the outcome. You just have to look around.
Thank you.
All right.
Experience in politics is not a requirement here. It may even be a handicap. Please vote for me. After 46 years, I represent a new leadership for
All
New
right.
York.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the candidates for those opening remarks. Now we turn to our questions, but first, a reminder to all of the candidates, you have only 1 minute to answer your questions. And now we're gonna start. For over 80 years, Social Security has provided older Americans with a financial safety net, ensuring them a modest income which they have earned by paying taxes over a lifetime of work. But without action to strengthen Social Security, benefits will have to be cut by 25% starting just 18 years from now, in 2034. Meantime, more and more in the 13th district are becoming part of the retirement community every day. Josh Barker will ask our first question to the candidates on this issue.
Thank you so much. My first question is, will you take action to update Social Security so it is financially sound and provides adequate retirement income for current and future generations? And how would you ensure that Social Security remains strong for future generations? Clyde Williams.
Absolutely. First and foremost, we have to defend Social Security because it's a very important program. We cannot let Republicans decimate it. And we have, as you said, about another 18 to 20 years before it goes broke. So these are the things, the 4 guidelines I would use in reference to that. 1, I would make certain that the program stays broad-based so that people all the country could still be a part of it. 2, I would make certain that anything that's done to Social Security would not impact the people who are already receiving Social Security or people who are near retirement. The third thing I would do, I would have a regional COLA, a cost of living adjustment, because people in New York City need more money to survive than people who live in Iowa or Alabama. And so for that reason, I would make certain that the cost of living adjustment would be adjusted. The other thing I would do is the following. I would make certain that we expand and improve the Affordable Health Care Act to make certain also that Medicare will be a program that we will keep around. And the last thing I would do is also look into the fact that some people are exploring about raising the actual cap on Social Security income to make certain that we shore up the program over time.
Thank you. Guillermo Linares.
First thing that I think we need to do is to recognize and make a clear message that people in Social Security have invested their entire life for the country and for the neighborhood where they live. The one thing that I say that it's time for us to change, and I will work very hard from Congress to do this, it's time for millionaires to put and pay the taxes that they need to pay in order to really have this program whole and bring a solution to this, because otherwise we will continue to see the wealthy getting more at the expense of the working people and those who are on fixed income. So that's my first thing that I would do. The other thing is that I would seek to make Social Security whole and something sacred that cannot be touched at all by reducing the funding that it is needed moving forward.
Adriano Espaillat.
Thank you. We need to have a revenue source to ensure that Social Security is not gutted. Although Social Security has over $2 trillion in surplus right now, the Republicans are perpetrating a lie saying that it's bankrupt right now, so they can take these measures and gut it. So we need to lift the cap on taxable income for millionaires. Right now, a millionaire pays the same amount of tax as working class people. So we need to lift the cap so that we have the revenue source, and we will be able to continue to pay for this very important program for seniors. We will be seniors in the future. We must protect our future. I would like to begin a discussion for a constitutional amendment to ensure that Social Security is sacred and preserved and is deeply embedded in the Constitution of the United States. We should do that right now. We should begin to have that discussion. Thank you.
To update and protect Social Security, a number of things can be done. Most importantly, we can remove some of the wealthiest Americans, some of them who live right here in New York City, from receiving Social Security benefits. It is possible to say that if you have more than X number of assets in the bank, that you're not eligible for the protections of Social Security. We also need to look at the amount of Social Security benefits that go to specific industries like pharma and insurance to be certain that those companies who are big providers to the government aren't exceeding the amount of profit that they should get or can get from the Social Security payout. Social Security means that our elderly and aged people don't die from poverty as they did before 1936. It's an important part of who we are as Americans, that we fulfill the promise we made to people who paid into Social Security, but tough questions have to be asked about where those benefits are going and how that money's spent.
Thank you. Joanny Cáceres.
As a tax preparer, I know the importance to be paying taxes on Social Security benefits. It's not right now, but as we become early, we're gonna need it for later on. Our kids will need it. If we've got the Social Security benefit, that's gonna make us being less. We need to have increased taxes on the richer community.
As I mentioned before, Social Security is the best government program ever created, by far. In 1935, when Social Security was created, more than half of our seniors lived in poverty. And if they didn't have a family member, a relative, or a friend to take care of them, they would die in poverty. Today, less than 10% of our seniors live in poverty. Now that's still too much, and we have to lower that number to 0. But it has been a great program. Unfortunately, it's also been a victim of its own success. Back in 1935, there was over 40 workers paying for each retiree, over 40 workers, because the life expectancy was only in the 60s. Nowadays, less than 3 workers for every 1 retiree paying into, because the life expectancy is 80 years old or above. So obviously, Social Security has to change. Now, I would raise the cap on income perhaps up to $1 million. That will help tremendously to make sure that the funding continues to people who need it. And certainly there needs to be some needs-based treatment for Social Security.
Thank you. Mr. Keith Wright.
Social Security was started in 1935, and it was meant as a promise. It was also meant to be a supplement, but that's why, do you remember years ago, about 8, 9 years ago, when they were talking about privatizing Social Security? That's the first thing we have to fight, the privatization of Social Security. Because thank God it didn't happen, because in 2008, that's when the financial roof fell in on this country. Number 2, we have to make sure that we have money in the system. So we need a real millionaire's tax, so that we can put money into the system so it'll be there for our children and our grandchildren, and yes, even for some of us. We have to make sure also that we expand Social Security. Make sure, in case one of the breadwinner, the person who has the Social Security dies, and their spouse is only left with partial benefits. And then that spouse is only left possibly living in poverty. We have to stop trying to raise the age of when Social Security, when you're allowed to get Social Security.
Sam Sloan.
Okay, I'm 71 years old, so I collect Social Security. I receive a monthly check from Social Security. I can tell you Social Security does not in any way cover any, even my most fundamental basic expenses of food. It doesn't even cover half of my expenses, and my expenses are very low. Nobody gets enough money from Social Security to sustain themselves. The only reason I'm able to survive and not die of starvation is because I work. I work every day. I'm a very hard worker. I produce books all the time. I post 700 books. That's how I make my living. I want to give you some bad news. Social Security is not a pension plan. Social Security is not a fund. There is no bank account that's holding our Social Security money. Social Security is a tax. It is a tax. That's all it is. People who work pay the Social Security tax, or self-employment tax in my case, and then once they get to be a certain age, like 62 now, they start getting benefits from the government, but it does not in any way cover their expenses. I don't know the solution. The problem is...
Time is up. Susan Johnson Cook.
First, I want to applaud President Obama last week, who talked about expanding Social Security. Half of the elderly who live only on Social Security, and 75% of those are women. And so we have to look at what's happening with Social Security. First of all, we have to fight the Republicans and others who want to cut it. Secondly, we got to fight privatization of Social Security. And third, we've got to lift the cap, and so make sure that those who are wealthy can pay more. But it's a shame when people have worked all their lives and have to choose between food, heat, and medicine. It's supposed to be secure, and if it's not secure, we have to fight for its security. I'm getting close to the age, some of you are getting close to the age, and I want it to be there. After all those paychecks where they took that money out, it's supposed to be there for us. And so we want to expand it, and I believe, yes, I want to applaud President Obama, and I stand with him on expanding Social Security. And my time, I want to know that I honor the time. I want you to know that. Okay, thank you.
Mike Gallagher.
Social Security was started, and the wage cap was at 90% of all wages gathered. And because rich people got richer and the rest of us didn't, it's now at 85%. So the first thing that has to be done is to change that wage cap. It's a simple fix. The reality about Social Security is that it's not bankrupt. You cannot listen to the Republicans because they're lying to you. It is not bankrupt. Even if it pays 75%, you're not losing all your money. It's not bankrupt. It's not going away. We need to ensure it by making sure that the wage cap increases. We need to make sure that people pay more. People can pay more. It's actually a program that we pay for. So all workers pay into the system, and the employers match that pay. So we make the employers pay first, and over a decade, we add in by a percentage point or something. We get more money that way. We also need to talk about limiting benefits to the wealthy people. Wealthy people who already get pensions, I'm sorry, there's an easy fix for these things. The problem is Republicans who refuse to negotiate realistically and in truth with us.
Thank you. Next question.
Okay, here we go. All right, we now turn to housing. New York City is facing a housing crisis, and we've lost 250,000 affordable apartments over the past few decades. The city just adopted the most sweeping affordable housing plan in the nation, but there is a critical role for the federal government to play as well as ensuring adequate affordable housing. Our next question will come from Ana Nieto of El Dario.
Thank you. Has federal funding for Section 8 and Section 202 housing kept up with needs? And if not, how much more should we spend? And how will you do to ensure adequate funding for these programs?
Okay.
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Williams.
Well, let me start out by saying this in reference to more money for housing. There are two federal programs right now that nobody's even applied for this money for. One is in the Treasury Department. It's called the Capital Magnet Fund. It has more than $90 million sitting there that's to be used to building low-income and very low-income housing. There's another program at HUD. It's the Housing Trust Fund, which has about another $200 million there. Once again, nobody has applied for. And so we have the ability to bring that money here, but you have to have the right person that can go, who knows how to work with government agency, who knows how the government works to bring that money back. But also, people are sitting right here up on the stage who have abdicated their responsibility time and time again when it came to housing. Keith Wright is the chairman of the Housing Committee. He has abdicated his responsibility repeatedly in the interest of taking more and more money from developers and landlords to make certain that he has money to run for re-election instead of actually taking care of the people in this congressional district. And you can yell all you want. The facts are the facts.
Time.
Guillermo Linares.
lack of housing is the primary reason why our families are being displaced and our seniors are being displaced from our communities in this district. For over 15 years, the federal government has not really invested in funding for housing, like the Mitchell-Lama type of housing that we desperately need. In fact, they're dismantling and privatizing it. If I go, this is gonna be in Washington, my top priority in addressing the displacement of families that we have and of seniors in my district. I believe that clearly, we need to have Section 8 that has been frozen, unfrozen, and allocate the funding that we need, because right now, most of our families are being displaced, and I'm gonna make that my top priority. Housing will be #1 for me, and followed by education.
Adriano Espaillat.
Thank you for the question. This is a very important question. You know, I think that we must not reduce ourselves to a tax. America is tired of mud. You know, so I'm going to present ideas. I think the next congressional member should bring ideas to the table. I am proposing a plan for an anti-gentrification mitigation zone, where tenants will have the right to first refusal, where HUD, the Federal Housing Agency, will assist tenants financially in potentially buying a building before the landlord sells it in a neighborhood that has been gentrified. In that same neighborhood, you know, developers must present an impact study for the community, because sometimes they build a luxury building, but the buildings around it, their value triples, and there goes the rent. Senior housing must be included. I propose the shutdown of the Edgecombe Correctional Facility in northern Manhattan to build senior housing.
Tony Evans.
To be certain that we can properly fund and make adequate housing, particularly for seniors and for young families, there are a number of paths that can be done between the state and federal government. The first, we would have to ask why the state government of the state of New York has allowed the city of New York to make one-sided deals with developers, to take down affordable housing, to put in temporary community-focused situations like the Pathmark on 125th Street, only to see it flipped 7 years later back to market housing. That's a failure of leadership of our state and congressional members who have stood by. New York had the strongest regulations to protect affordable housing of anywhere in this nation. But a one-party political system has looked the other way while they've made deals with developers to take out affordable housing without replacing it for seniors and for young families.
Next candidate, number 5.
One of my #1 top priority would be to advocate for senior and family for affordable housing. We need to have those programs. We really need it because there's a lot of stuff on Section 8 housing. We need to fight to have Section 8. There's a lot of people that need it and they're not getting it because we don't have people that fight for us. As one of my top priorities, I will advocate for that. Thank you.
Okay, candidate number 6, Adam Clayton Powell IV.
Republicans and President Ronald Reagan practically eliminated the ability to have much affordable housing. Those of you on Section 8 for over 30, 35 years recall how you would only pay 25% of your income. Ronald Reagan raised that up to 30% of your income and also eliminated a lot of the funding that would come into NYCHA and into other parts of our housing. We need to get back to changing the AMI formula. The AMI formula, area median income, uses New York City, but it also uses Putnam County, Rockland County, and Westchester. No, not Long Island. I repeat, Putnam County, Rockland County, Westchester, along with the city of New York. What's interesting is in 1990, Congresswoman Nita Lowey took out Westchester out of the AMI that belongs to us. And in 1998, Congressman Gilliam took out Putnam County, but they are still considered for us. They are still used for us in the city. We need to change that. You know the t-shirt straight out of Compton, straight out of Harlem? That AMI formula comes straight out of Washington, D.C. And finally, a moratorium when I get elected to Congress. No more 100% luxury housing.
He's right.
I think this is the forum. I don't think this is the forum for personal attacks, but I just want to keep my campaign on the issues to make life better for the folks in the 13th Congressional District. But that being said, yes, Section 202 housing, our senior housing money needs to be preserved and up. Yes, Section 8 needs to be preserved, but I'm probably the only candidate on this dais that has actually presented a plan to preserve and to build more low and moderate income housing. We can do that right now by going into the abandoned property fund. I'm tired of luxury rentals going up all over the place. I don't think we need to have a moratorium. But yes, let me just say this, in this year's state budget, I am putting in $125 million for Section 8 housing because it's been far too long that any money has gone into Section 8, and I can't tell you how much people need that. Thank you.
Candidate Sam Sloan.
Frankly, I have the opposite view from most of the speakers here. I used to work for a company that was renovating abandoned buildings. There's still all over New York City abandoned buildings. There are empty lots. There are toxic waste dumps, empty land. There could be housing all over the city. There would be plenty of housing probably, and there'd be more people living here. But we've got to stop all these regulations which are preventing builders from building. As I say, I'm the opposite of everybody else here. We should allow builders to build on these properties, allow buildings to go up, allow more housing to be created, and then the market, the free market, will solve the problem. We don't need to go and ask the government for $100 billion or something like that, which they're not going to give us anyway.
All right, candidate number 9, Susan Johnson Cook.
As the only candidate who's worked with housing and urban development on the federal level, I know what can happen when there are partnerships with the federal government and with cities. But the one thing they're going to ask is have our states and our cities been accountable. So the first thing we got to do is hold our cities and state accountable. They're supposed to protect and take care of our citizens. They developed hope cities where they would focus in on cities that were ready to do some business. And so we do need affordable housing, but most of all, we need to make sure seniors are not forced out of the housing that they've lived in all their lives. We need to revisit what's called FDR, the Federal Direct Domain Registry, where we can make sure that seniors and others who've lived in the community all their lives are able to keep their homes. So we've got to make sure accountability happens, responsibility happens, and make sure that we protect our seniors who have paved the way and blazed the trails that we now walk on. I will make that a priority for me. Every single person I talk to in this district says affordable housing. That will be the priority, and I will not turn my head like some have done and walk on by.
Mike Gallagher.
Mike Gallagher.
Housing policy like this is a problem all over the United States. It's not just here in New York. We all know this. You can see it in other cities. We've heard stories about Chicago. We know places all over the country that this happens. So what we need to do is find other representatives in the Congress to partner with to make sure that we advocate and make money come to these programs. We need partnerships. We need people. Urban areas need to band together to get these things done. We need to use tax policy. The Republicans are going to use tax policy to change things. We need to ensure the benefits come to us, for working people, for low-income families, not affordable housing, low-income families. In this district, there are a lot of people who make much less than the median, which is in the $37,000 range. We need to partnership with community housing groups. We need to get private money to those groups to build low-income housing. These are not like hard things to conceive of. We just need to act on them. And the political will and the action has not been there. I'm committed to this. That's what I said.
Thank you.
The next question on the table this evening involves the issue of livable communities. That is, of course, the idea of maintaining and providing the infrastructure that allows New Yorkers to enjoy a quality of life as they age. Things like access to decent health care and social and recreational opportunities, as well as the ability to get where they need to go by public transportation or by simply walking safely. Josh Barker will ask the question to the candidates on this issue.
Thank you, Sandra. Pedestrian safety is one of the keys to making neighborhoods attractive as a place to age. Has government done enough to protect pedestrian safety, such as ensuring traffic lights are timed for safe street crossing and road design takes walkers into account? Sorry about that. If not, what more would you do? Clyde Williams, excuse me.
Let me first address one other thing and I'll answer the question.
Hold on, Mr. Williams.
Yes.
We love the feedback, it's great, but we do want to hear from the candidates. That's why we're here tonight. So if we could just kind of keep it respectful so we can hear what they all have to say.
Thank you.
And the first thing I want to say is this, that no one is attacking anybody. People need to understand that people are not telling them the truth. And so this is clear about how they've been playing games in Albany for far too long. Putting money in the budget doesn't mean the money's going to end up there. But let me answer this question. There's money in the Department of Transportation to do all the kind of things that you're talking about, to extend public safety for people. It's extremely important that we do that. Money at the Department of Transportation can be used for various things, and one of it should be used to make certain that we make certain that the streets in our community are safer for our elders, in reference to widening our streets, doing the things that we make certain we have additional traffic lights that have all the necessary things to make certain that they see them. And so there's federal money there to do those kind of things. But again, we need to be clear about making certain that people understand what people are talking about, what is real and what is not real. And a lot of what they've been saying up here is just not true. And you need to understand that. You can look in your own community and see for a fact it's not true.
Thank you. Mr. Linares?
I led the effort in North Manhattan to confront mobilizing the community, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the city, and turn it into one of the safest. I believe that when we talk about seniors, I want to see if we're looking at safety for them. I think we need to really engage more proactively with law enforcement, but I also feel that there comes an age for seniors where they should not have to pay for public transportation for them to move from here to there when they're most vulnerable. I believe that I'm going to fight for that, because if there's one thing that I want to see for seniors is for them to have mobility, especially if they're independent. So I'm going to fight for that, because I believe that we need to make sure that they have access to the services that they have and access to the transportation system that we have.
Mr. Espaillat?
Ultimately, the challenge is how do we make public transportation more attractive to New Yorkers? I was instrumental in implementing select bus service. We piloted it on Fordham Row and 207th Street. We then expanded it the full length of 125th Street. We were also successful in implementing slow zones around schools, and we were also very much successful in following the mayor's Vision Zero plan. Just recently, I partnered with Council Member Idanis Rodriguez in having the first car-free day in New York City. Bogota, Colombia does this. They've been doing it for decades. Other cities across the world are doing this. How do we make public transportation more accountable? How do we keep our car behind? We have to raise revenue for that. I believe very much so in having more capital funding for public transportation, mass transit, for our subway system, for our bus system. The vast majority of the residents in Congressional District 13 don't drive a car. They take the subway, they take the bus to work. Thank you so much.
To answer the question, has the government done enough to take the elderly into account? I think that the federal laws about access for both the elderly and those who are physically challenged are sufficient. I think when we talk about pedestrian safety, that becomes partially a community responsibility. I'm not sure that there's a government program that says you ought to help your neighbor across the street. I think that's common decency. But here's an area where your leaders can lead, because you could provide in the federal budget grants for housing so that young families would be encouraged to live in neighborhoods that are older, so that you could bring into a community of elderly people some young people, some working class families, to make certain that you have a diversity of families and access. I was very safe and felt safe in this town until we started adding bike lanes. Now, I'm a person who rides his bike all over the city, and I get confused crossing Columbus Avenue. So I don't know if at the local level we've done everything we can, but I think there are some things that can be done there.
It is very important for our community to have, to engage with enforcement. We need to fight for the senior to have public transportation free. We need to keep our community, our transportation. We need to have to feel sure where we are. That we're crossing the street, we need to have someone to help us cross. We need to fight to have public transportation, not only for seniors, but for all of us. Thank you.
Ask you next, Congressman. I will fight for seniors on a fixed income to have access to free public transportation. Again, seniors on fixed income deserve to be able to move around. But I think it all goes back to affordable housing, and it can be done. When I was a state assembly member, we built a 100% all affordable housing, Colon Plaza, on 115th Street and Madison Avenue. En la calle 115 y Madison Avenue, yo ayudé a traer un edificio que es completamente vivienda asequible, Colon Plaza, 100%. Todos los apartamentos son asequibles. And if I'm not mistaken, Keith, I think I heard you say that a moratorium is not quite needed. I disagree with that. If I'm elected to Congress, I believe we need a moratorium. That's what I said. Okay, well, I believe, thank you then, because I believe we need a moratorium on 100% luxury housing. No more 100% luxury housing if I'm elected to Congress. Enough is enough. Some of the neighborhoods in this congressional district have been gentrified. We don't need to continue gentrification.
Thank you for the question. I think it's pedestrian safety. As far as pedestrian safety is concerned, the mayor's ground Vision Zero program has been very effective. I was the one this last state budget, along with Assemblyman Robert Rodriguez, that put in the money to make sure that the 2nd Avenue subway would come up to 125th Street. It was going to be stopped at 96th Street. Also, I think it's very important. It's very important that we get rid of this whole accessoride program and start fresh. I think the accessoride program is just totally out of date. The drivers sometimes are rude. They don't pick you up on time. It just does not work. So we have to redesign how the accessoride programs are. Also, as you know, just as an aside, I am the author of the bill to create free transportation on bus and subways for seniors during off-peak hours. That's the bill in Albany right now. Thank you very much.
I happen to live in the highest crime area in New York City. I live in the Morris Heights section of the Bronx, which overlooks the Cross Bronx Expressway. This, by the way, proves I'm a tough guy. And between 1968 and 1971, when I lived in the East Village, I was held up at knife point or gun point 11 times. I never knew when my next day was going to be my last. It was a very, very dangerous time back there. Even where I live now on Davidson Avenue in the Bronx, they say that like 10, 15 years ago, when you wake up in the morning, there would almost always be a dead body on the street. I just want to know what the situation was. There's been tremendous progress as far as safety in New York City. New York City happens to be one of the safest cities, percentage-wise, in the United States. In my place where I live, Morris Heights, more arrests per capita than any other place in New York City. So I'm definitely in the highest crime area in New York City. But I've been there for 11, in my current residence, 11 years, and a few blocks down the street for about 5 years. So I feel that New York City is doing very well. We have the lowest crime rate. We have
Thank you.
Streets.
Susan Johnson Cook.
I believe the question was on infrastructure and quality of living issues. I met today with 100 senior citizens, and the first question they said is, when you become Congresswoman, will you make sure that we have a way to get up and down the subways? Living in Washington, D.C. for 4 years, every single station has escalators up and escalators down, elevators up and elevators down, so that you don't wear people out. And so we want to make sure that the infrastructure there is together. I also swim with what's called the Harlem Honeys and Bears, and we want to make sure any honeys in the house, we want to make sure that there are exercise programs available to seniors and accessible to seniors and those who are disabled, making sure not only are the pools and other instruments open, but also the ability to get in and out of the pools. So I would be one that would champion the cause of making sure that the quality of life for seniors and all will be available and accessible. That is my #1 issue. Thank you so much.
I am a pedestrian like all of you, and have noticed that the lights are timed slightly different when you leave, so I have to applaud the mayor's effort at Vision Zero, but we have to accept that many of the topics related to this are not really federal issues. Do you really want the federal government to tell you what to do on the streets of New York like that? I find it hard to believe, and I also find it hard to believe the accessoride has anything to do with the federal government. We can create incentives to make better systems, we can create incentives to make subway elevators, we could create in the federal level some means with which to get the things that we need in the course of tax policy. That's what the Republicans are going to do. They just want to hand it over to rich people. Hey, look at Trump, look at all these guys. So in my view, what we really want to do in Congress is make incentives for our community to get what it needs. In the case of local places, even just our public spaces where it's easier for seniors to walk upstairs, where there are railings, things that are everyday items that people need. And it's an incentive-based program at the federal level, and that's what I would advocate for.
Our fourth question. New York State this year raised its minimum wage to $15 an hour, phased in over several years and reaching $15 in the city by the end of 2018. Supporters say the move will keep more people who work full-time out of poverty, but opponents say many workers will lose their jobs, as companies unable to make payroll are forced to lay off employees or hurt consumers by forcing companies to raise prices. With our next question is Ana Nieto from El Diario.
Thank you, Mary Jo. The current minimum wage is 7.25 cents. Will you support a federal legislation to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour nationally?
First of all, yes, I would definitely support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. But let me also say this with the rest of my time. Accessoride, as Michael said, and the 100% luxury buildings, as far as making certain you have a moratorium, that's done on a state level. It has nothing to do with being a congressional member. We need to understand this. These individuals have the power to do these things now, and they have not done it. They are selling you an empty bag of goods time and time again. And at some point, we as a community have to say enough is enough. They are not watching out for your best interests. That is the bottom line. They can sit up here and make it as flowery as they want to, but the truth is the truth. You deserve better as a community. People have had decades to solve your problems, and they have not done it. There's more and more affordable housing, more and more luxury housing going up every day, and less affordable housing going up less and less every single day. And they've had the ability to do something and have not done it. Please hold them accountable on June 28th.
All right.
Anna, hold on, please. Anna, if you can please ask the question again. If you can please ask the question again.
I will have to ask the question again. Current minimum wage, $7.25. Please, will you support the federal legislation to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour nationally?
I am the sponsor of the legislation increasing the minimum wage at the state level, and absolutely yes. And I am concerned of the impact that increasing the minimum wage would have, especially in small businesses that are the driving force to really employ people. I would look to also have tax subsidies for small businesses, especially depending on the number of employees that they have, so that there's some tax relief for them as we increase the minimum wage and we ensure that we keep the employment increasing in our community.
President Franklin D. Roosevelt implemented the minimum wage for the first time right in the middle of the worst depression that hit this United States. He did so not only to give money to people's pockets, but because he felt that was an economic stimulus effort for small businesses. Small businesses continue to be the biggest employer across the United States. So by doubling the minimum wage, and I was the author of the bill in the state Senate with an index in it, so we don't have to go back in the future and deal with it again. So as the cost of living continues to increase, so does the minimum wage. And so this minimum wage must go national. It must not only be in New York City. You know, people that are going to make an extra $100 a week are not going to run off to the Caribbean in a luxury vacation. They're going to go to the small stores and buy Pampers and milk and first necessity items. This is the best economic development plan we have in this country, and I support it. Creo que el salario mínimo es Gracias.
I do not support asking the federal government to set a minimum wage at $15. There is no standard economic theory that has ever supported the idea that a global wage increase preserves jobs or changes the impact of the working citizen. So if you do that, you're then going to ask the government to set a standard that takes into account the cost of living in New York City, and the cost of living in Topeka, Kansas, and the cost of living in Duluth, Minnesota, and the cost of living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the cost and the expense in New York could come down. I don't think the federal government ought to be in the business of telling employers like myself how much they should pay the lowest skilled worker in their businesses. No.
Yes, I support to have a $15 minimum wage increase. We deserve to have an increase because of the cost of living increase. We need to have an increase of minimum wage. Para poder sustituir, necesitamos tener un aumento en el trabajo, en el salario, en el salario de nosotros. El aumento del costo de vida es tan grande que necesitamos tener un aumento. Claro que sí, que voy con eso. Claro que sí, nacionalmente.
Absolutely, we need to raise the minimum wage to $15. I disagree with my brother here. The federal government does need to dictate at least a floor to small businesses so that employees can have a livable wage. $15 an hour, it's only $30,000 a year. Nobody's going to get wealthy off of that. It's the very basics. And yes, it can be done despite a Republican-led Congress. The first thing I did when I got elected to the Assembly, as I mentioned before, was work with a progressive group of clergy and labor to raise New York State's minimum wage. That was in 2000. And recently, I was glad to see Governor Cuomo and the state legislature raise it to 15. It's not for the entire state. Upstate is still stuck at $12.50, and it will take years, but at least it's a step in the right direction. California just raised its minimum wage to $15, the only state for the entire state, and we need the federal government to take that example and raise the minimum wage for all workers. $15 is the least we can do. That and the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. The first one was the Equal Pay Act of 1963. I'm proud to say my father was a sponsor of that. It was signed into law by John F. Kennedy, but unfortunately, we still don't have equal pay.
Throughout this campaign, I've asked folks to judge me on what I've done. Judging me on what I've done is a good indication of what I will do in the future. Some people have nothing to be judged. So, I just want to say I am the author of the minimum wage bill in the New York State Assembly back in 2012 with indexing for inflation. And if we had done that bill back then, if the Senate had done that bill, you know what the minimum wage would have been right now? $15 an hour. I am a strong advocate to put forth some of the great things that we've done here in New York, some of the things that we can all be proud of, and make sure that they're on a national level, because what's good for New York is also good for the United States of America. Thank you very much.
I think this talk about the $15 minimum wage that's been come up in the latest presidential debates is a bit misleading, because as I understand it, the proposed $15 minimum wage proposed by Sanders and Hillary Clinton only applies to large companies with employees more than 50 people. So in other words, if a company has 50 people and they have to pay $15 minimum wage, they'll just fire one person, so they only have 49 people, and they can ignore the $15 minimum wage. Secondly, what's going to happen to prices? Let's say McDonald's has to pay their workers $15 an hour. What will the price of a Big Mac be? Will the price of a Big Mac be still $5 like it is now, or will it go up to $15 too? So, I mean, you have to know that as soon as they have to pay more people more money, then the price of everything they make will go up too. It just doesn't stay stable like this. Right now, I think that very few people, I could be wrong about this, but I think very few people in New York City actually work at minimum wage. Almost everybody makes a little bit more, at least, than minimum wage. I may be wrong, I don't know, go ahead.
All right, Big Mac, okay. Yes, I believe there should be an increase, and I believe very strongly in what I call human dignity, that people need to have enough money to live. We have people in this district who work very hard every day, 6 and 7 days a week, and still don't have enough money at the end of the week. And so we need to make sure that there's food on the table, that there's dignity. The average income in this district is $34,000, and so we certainly need to raise that. As the daughter of a small business owner and as a small business owner myself, I think we also need to look at how we incentivize, but also how we support it. What federal resources are available to small businesses to help them become stable and also then be able to help their employees. So I would certainly go for an increase, and I think that everyone needs to be increased, particularly minority women business owners as well. And so that would be my stance.
I am an advocate for the $15 minimum wage, but I do accept some of the arguments that Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton have made, which is that it can't be a universal approach in every circumstance and every time. And so I think that is a politically real answer, because the congressional representation, the 434 other representatives who are going to have something to say about this, particularly in smaller communities and with less income, are going to argue this for all these economics reasons that have been brought up. But the striving for $15 minimum wage is absolutely necessary. It's a reasonable goal for us, for people who can live and make a living and eat and find housing. It's impossible to think otherwise. So yes, I am for it, but there are recognizable political limitations that you have to take into account if you're going to get something done at a federal congressional level.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Candidates having a good time? Yeah, shake your head. All right, here we go. Once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, people could count on a pension, or at least a 401k, when they got a job. And Americans are 15 times likelier to save if they can do it through payroll deduction, rather than having to go out and open their own IRA. But fewer companies are offering their employees any retirement savings plan. And now over half of New York State's private sector employees lack access, including an astounding 67% among Hispanics. As you know, over half the residents in the 13th district are Latinos. Our next question comes from Josh Barker.
Thank you, Bob. Lack of access to employer-sponsored savings plans, caregiving obligations, and financial debts are making saving for retirement more difficult. What would you do to help New Yorkers better prepare financially for retirement? Mr. Williams.
Well, there's been a conversation on a federal level to figure out how to get more people across the country to actually start saving more money. And one of the ideas was figuring out how to bring about actual federal plans in order to make citizens do that. I think it's imperative. For a lot of people who are living on fixed incomes, we know for a fact that Social Security may not be enough. And so we have an obligation to figure out how we should do more and more in order to actually take care of our citizens. And so those are the kind of things we should look at doing. We should also work with our private employers to try to figure out how it is we push them in a direction to do more, to make certain they put money aside also for their employees. There needs to be several things we can do to incentivize them to do that on a federal level and on a state level. And so I think we need to start thinking outside of the box to figure out how it is we do something more compelling to make certain that we give people the ability to have a savings as they get older. It's in the interest of our country, and it's in the interest of everyone in the state in order to make certain that we do something along those lines.
Thank you.
I believe that if we're going to look at how things are now, where people in fixed income or disabled are not able to really make ends meet, either because they have to think of paying the rent or paying the bills and buying the medicine, then I say what we need to do is really invest to create jobs and also make sure the millionaires pay the taxes that they need to pay, so that seniors and people who are already retired and gave everything, I say they should not have to be squeezed and targeted to squeeze it, take away even the fixed income that they have right now. So I think that we have to restructure. When you are working you have a job, you have to have your retirement guarantee ironclad. Nobody can touch it. And that's what I want to pursue.
That's a lot.
Espaillat.
Espaillat.
Es para allá que vamos. For traditionally, the issue of savings and income inequality has been framed along the issues of wages and rent. But there's another issue that impacts savings dramatically, and that is child care costs. Families in the 13th Congressional District have to pay $16,000 for child care for an infant. They have to pay $11,000 a year for a toddler, and they have to pay $9,000 a year for a school-age child. I propose, and these are the plans that have been put forward by my campaign, not attacking anybody, ideas, convincing you with ideas to see who the best candidate is. I propose a $6,000 tax credit for families making under $30,000 a year, a $2,400 tax credit for families under 50. Child care continues to be a major cost for families and factors into the income inequality crisis affecting this district.
To better prepare people financially, there are a number of things I think the federal government can do. The first is it could make rules and regulations clear so that private industry, private employers could benefit from treating their employees with dignity and helping them save in guaranteed savings plans. The federal government can set tax policy that would allow these companies to bring home or repatriate those cash awards and savings that they're keeping offshore right now if they were providing guaranteed benefits. The government took its eye off this ball after the unionization of many workers in this country, and it needs to look at now. The other things that we need to look at, particularly for seniors, are how do we exempt savings for seniors so that they're not counted against you when you get to the end of life and you need to look for federal assistance or nursing homes. And right now, people are hiding assets because of the way the system is set up and needs to be corrected.
I believe that we need to push for saving plan retirement because as the cost of living being increased, we need to guarantee our seniors to have a better life. If we have a retirement plan, we could use that money. We don't need to use only Social Security benefits. We will have both. Thank you.
We need to help our seniors, obviously, in their golden years. You know, many of these programs are good, but they simply just barely allow them to make ends meet. We know that. A lot of us have to help our families. My 84 years young mother, you know, I help her with so many things, but it's tough. It's difficult. And so I want to take a moment, because it's difficult to answer a lot of these questions in 1 minute. But I do want to invite, because I don't even know if we're going to have a closing statement the way it's looking. I want to invite all of you so we can continue the conversation. I have a forum on senior issues this Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning at the Poets Den, 309 East 108th Street in East Harlem. Come by este viernes a las 10 de la mañana. Tengo un foro para personas mayores y se va a hablar en español, los panelistas y el foro completo para seguir esta conversación, to continue this conversation on senior issues, because you all matter. You all, not just because you vote, but because you're in your golden years, and if we're lucky enough, we will get there. In fact, I think many of the candidates already got there already.
Keith, right?
This goes back to one of the questions I answered earlier. Social Security was meant as a supplement, not the main deal. So alternate retirement systems have to be created. We have to create, Congress must pass a work and save employee retirement system, because so many times our employees who are not given pension plans out of the employers that they work for. So employees we must create an employee retirement system. So that's, as I said, Social Security is just meant as a supplement, because, for the most part, people in this district are living at Social Security as their primary source of income, and that's just not the way it's supposed to be. That's why, and also, it goes to, it's all connected. That's why it goes to why affordable housing is such a big deal and the #1 issue in this congressional district. Thank you.
Unfortunately, the implication of your question is opposite of the policy of the United States government. The policy of the United States government is, and for a long time has been, that people should spend their money. They should spend their money to keep the economy going. As long as people spend their money, then there's more economy, more things happen, more people make money, and so on and so forth. So they basically don't want anybody to have any savings. And basically they want everybody to spend right. That's why almost nobody that I know has any savings. Now, another point that the guy down the hall brought up was that they actually penalize people who do have savings. Right now, they're investigating me. They think I've got money squirreled away someplace, and they think I've got millions of dollars that I'm not telling anybody about. And it's a real problem. People who have savings are being punished for having their savings. And those rules against people having savings have got to be abolished so people can at least become secure that if they have money in the bank, the government's not going to come after them and try to grab them.
Whoa. It starts long before we become seniors, and as a woman, the first thing that needs to happen is income equality. If a white woman makes 77 cents on a dollar, and a black woman makes 64 cents on a dollar, and a Latina woman makes 54 cents on a dollar, there's nothing to save. So they gotta have income equality. Sisters, can I get a witness up in here? We need some money to save. Secondly, we need to look at long-term care because it needs to start long before we need the long-term care, and it does not come out of our pension. The third thing we need to do is the Care for Caregivers Act credit to make sure that those who take care of others will not lose all their money that they've saved up. On the senior level of government, they have what they call as a thrift savings plan so that they do make sure that the senior employees are taken care of. That needs to be structured down the pipe for all the employees, not only of federal government, but also for those outside of federal government. But the first step is income equality. Sisters, we're gonna be having a What Women Want forum. Thank you. Amat.
The question of savings gets right into the Social Security Act, which we all get a statement for, talks about your contributions. And the fact remains is that that's the mechanism that we should use for people to save. That people can have a supplemental Social Security account of their own, that they can save money in. The mechanisms are in place in the government already for. The only people that won't like it is Wall Street, because they will get cut out of what you're gonna do with your money. So for me, it's the easiest answer for you to find out, which is, you could put away money in excess of what is taken out for your employee contribution and put that money into account-bearing savings for yourself, which later on in life you will see every year when they send you your statement what you're doing. And it's the same thing. In some countries, they make mandatory savings. Some countries have used post offices to make non-banking people who don't have savings account use that. In America, we have the Social Security Act, we have the Social Security accounts. People can use this as Social Security Plus, and that's what I would say. The easiest, best way to do it is through Social Security.
Thank you.
We will now move on to our final question of the evening. As the population ages, family caregivers face increasing demands. Already, these unsung heroes provide over $470 billion worth of care every year across the country to aging parents, spouses, and other loved ones. Everything from making sure that they take their medications and getting them to doctor's appointments, to bathing, dressing, and shopping. Ana Nieto will ask the final question on this issue.
Thank you, Sandra. Do you support federal tax credits for caregivers under the Congressional Credit for Caregiving Act? And here in New York, has government spent enough to ensure adequate in-home services to the elderly, to relieve caregivers' burdens, and help New Yorkers age in their own house?
First, yes, I do support the tax credit. Second thing is that I think people should have the ability to stay in their home if they have the ability to do so. One of the programs I've supported, and I'm on the advisory board, is an organization called City Health Works. And what we're doing right now is providing people with assistance, going into public housing right now, paying people $15 an hour, and training them to be healthcare coaches to do exactly what we're talking about. We know for a fact that people are more open to talking to people that they know about their medical conditions. The people who they also know who live in their environment are going to make certain they go to the doctor. They're eating right and doing all the things necessary in order to really figure out how we do more preventative health care instead of people using the emergency room basically as a primary care physician. And that's the thing that the federal government should be doing. It's the thing that the Affordable Health Care Act did that I helped to get work on and promote when I worked for President Obama. And so this is something extremely important that we need to promote and continue to push because it's something that will make a profound difference in the lives of people here in New York City and across the country.
I would definitely support a tax credit, and in fact, I believe that we have such a wealth of willingness on the part of people who retire and have time to really make a difference and help the most fragile and the elderly. I also believe very strongly, and I initiated this in Northern Manhattan, intergenerational efforts involving the school system, the university system, because we have to connect the elderly with the younger members of our community. So I will certainly support that. And I believe that at the end of the day, if we don't protect our seniors that have given everything for our community, for our city, state, and this country, then we don't have any future. And they have a wealth of experience that they can channel to younger generations. So I definitely will pursue this aggressively.
Yes, I will support the tax credit. And let me say to you that the federal government has now put over $8 billion into the DSRIP program. The DSRIP program is a plan to reduce unwarranted hospitalization rates by 25%. That particular program has a home care provision where primary care physicians and those home health aide will visit seniors in their homes to make sure that they're taking their medicine adequately, to ensure that they engage in prevention, not in the response after it's done and wind up in the emergency room. We must work very closely to ensure that they get those services. Very many seniors are paying co-payments for their medication, for the prescription drugs. We must fully fund their prescription drugs. And finally, let me say this to you. I believe in the single-payer plan. I know that President Obama was mugged by the Republicans.
Tony Evans.
Thank you.
I do support a federal tax credit for caregivers. And to answer the second question, has the government spent enough? I think the answer is no. I think how a society treats the weakest, the smallest, the oldest in its grasp is an indicator of what kind of society it is. And one of the reasons that we haven't spent enough in this area is because we've been so terribly inefficient and corrupt and morbidly obese in other parts of our government. We spend entirely too much money on bad programs that are popular and not enough time focusing to make sure that we can clear these good dollars. I can tell you our family's experience caring for my mother in the last 2 weeks of her life were traumatic. And like most other people, you know, you have to make sacrifices there, but we were able to provide independently. And for those who can't, we should provide some federal tax credit.
Yes, I do support the tax credit for caregivers, for those aging people Also, I will support that those seniors that need caregiver service continue to have it. We need to protect our seniors. We need to have them, give them love and care. Thank you.
Yes, I would support that tax credit, but we need to do much more. Caregiving oftentimes is temporary. We are the only nation on earth without a family paid leave. When I go to Congress, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that we get on par with the rest of the world. New York State just passed family paid leave, and California, Rhode Island, New Jersey have it, but we should not turn a blind eye to the other 46 states. We need to have a family paid leave so that we can do the caregiving that needs to happen when somebody's sick, when somebody needs attention. When a woman gives birth, they can stay at home for a few weeks and care for their newborn, as opposed to having to figure out whether doing that or missing a couple of paychecks is the appropriate thing to do. Again, I repeat, the only nation on earth, nothing to be proud of. We need to fix that. Family paid leave now.
The way that the United States of America treats its senior citizen population leaves a lot to say, leaves a lot to long for. United States, compared to other countries, sometimes we show no respect for our senior citizen population. When they're fighting to pay for medicines, fighting for rent, and just fighting to keep their heads above water, there's gotta be a better way. And of course, yes, I would support the care to the giving piece of legislation, because the tax credit is very important. But aside from that, we need to revere our senior citizen population. We need to make sure that during the golden years, that they don't have to struggle, because they have basically taken care of the generations and the generation probably before them. So we have to make sure that we reconfigure, especially in comparison to other countries, how we look at our senior citizen population and how we treat them.
Your question leads to another question, a related question I think that's of interest to me. There's a tremendously large number of people in this 13th congressional district who are living in the shadows. They don't have any ID, they don't have a driver's license, they probably don't have a social security card. Nobody knows who they are. We don't know how many people there are like this. I want to make it a federal law that anybody who lives here and can prove they live here and prove who they are should have an ID card or a driver's license, one or the other. By the way, if you ever try to get a driver's license, you know you have to have 6 points to get one, and I myself had a hard time getting 6 points so I could renew my driver's license. Once we know who is here and everybody has an ID card, then we can get to grips on the problem of how to solve it. But right now, with thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of people right in this district who we don't even know who they are, or what their names are, or where they are, how can we deal with these huge problems that they have? And the people you're talking about who are getting a tax credit, what about these people who have no money, don't file taxes because they have no money, income to file taxes with? So what good is the tax credit to those people?
I hope you get your card. If you're going to Washington, you need to do your homework. And there's been federal legislation that's already been introduced, bipartisan legislation called the Credit for Caring Act, by 4 on the House floor. It's called House R 4708, and on the Senate floor 2759. Bennett, Sanchez, Reed, and Ernst have already introduced it so that there can be tax credits for those who are caring for loved ones and for the disabled. I would totally support it, and as a freshman in Congress, I would join in with them and see how else we could strengthen it so that we could care for our community. We're not talking about the city level, we're not talking about the state level, we're talking about going to Washington. And if you're going to Washington, you need to do your homework. Yes, I will support it.
I would too support this kind of federal tax credit. I think that that is the essence of the argument I'm putting forth to you here, is that that is where the business of our federal government is happening. It's at the federal tax level, federal tax policy, and the congressional power. The Republicans in Congress are looking to give it all away to rich people. I'm here to defend the rights of people like my family, like your family, the people that live here and struggle and strive every day to make things happen. My dad is older than my mom and is struggling with her Parkinson's disease, with all the same issues that we just talked about, for hygiene, for care, for money, for the whole thing. It's everywhere. It's not a Democratic or Republican issue. It's an issue of dignity and care in life in our community, and it's something that we don't do enough of, which is to subsidize people in America. We need to subsidize people more, and that's what I'm for.
Thank you to all the candidates. That wraps up our questioning for the evening. The candidates will now provide their closing remarks in the order determined by our second number draw earlier in the evening. That draw determined that Sam Sloan will speak first. Remember, each candidate have only 1 minute.
I want to finish the opening statement I didn't get to finish. Number one, I want to erect a statue in Union Square in honor of our great American patriot, Edward Snowden. Number two, I want you to know that I am the only candidate here who actually lives in the Bronx. I'm the only candidate here who has children in public school. I don't think there's one, as far as I know, I'm the only candidate here who actually has children currently attending public school in New York City. I'm the only candidate here who has children in the United States military fighting these foreign wars over there. And I want to say that I hope that everybody in this room, regardless of who wins this election, I hope everybody here will support Hillary Clinton for president and will try to stop Trump, because we've got to stop this man. He's a very, very dangerous man for this country. And the one more thing I want to add, if I can do it in 9 seconds, is I want to build a gas pipeline from Iran to Bangladesh to help the Bangladesh people.
Thank you. Candidate number 2, Clyde Williams.
Let me start out by thanking you for having this debate tonight, and let me say this also. There are a lot of ideas to discuss up here today, and I agree with Senator Espaillat that it should be about ideas. But unfortunately, the majority of ideas discussed by people tonight have no chance of passing in Washington, D.C., or have nothing to do with being in Congress. But since we're here to talk about seniors, let me tell you this story. A couple of weeks ago, I met a woman who lived in public housing, who was a prisoner in her own apartment because she lived on the 12th floor of her building, and her elevator had not worked in 2 weeks. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, that we need to understand that we need to fix right here in our own backyard. We've had the ability to do that for decades, but people have not lived up to what they're supposed to do. And now, once again, they're coming here to tell you whatever they think you want to hear, instead of telling you the truth. If you want change, you need to vote for change. And if you want real change, the only person up here who's actually worked on public policy on a regular basis for 2 presidents in Washington, D.C. is me. I have the ability to go to Washington, D.C. on day 1 and do something very different to help this community for decades to come. I ask that you support me on June 28th, Clyde Williams.
Thank you very much. The next candidate, Suzanne Johnson Cook.
What do we want? A fresh voice. When do we want it? Now. You have a choice and you have a voice. Susan Johnson Cook, Susan with a Z, so you remember me. I'm the only one with real Washington experience. I'm ready, I'm experienced, I'm seasoned, and I'm one tough cookie. We've got it all in our community. Washington Heights, you need someone from there. You need someone in Washington, D.C. Harlem and the Hill. You need someone from Inwood, and you need someone with insight. Someone who knows El Barrio or Bronx, and remember that I am the Bronx. I am Susan Johnson Cook, Susan with a Z, so you will remember me. We have a diverse district. You need someone who understands the diversity and can go to D.C. and represent you at the table. I'm a woman who's your choice. I'm a woman with your voice, and I want you to remember me, Susan with a Z. I am the bomb. Don't forget, June 28th, you do have a choice, and you do have a voice. Remember me, Susan with a Z. Women, it's time to put a woman in the House. Not just the White House, but the House of Representatives. Thank you very much, and I approve of this message.
Adam Clayton Powell.
Thank you very much. Quickly, again, I want to invite all of you this Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning to my forum on seniors, so we can continue the conversation. The Poets Den, 309 East 108th Street, and you can get a flyer as you leave. Este viernes a las 10 de la mañana los invito a todos para que vengan a mi foro para personas mayores este viernes en el barrio 1309 Este de la 108 para seguir la conversación. But what you need is somebody who will fight for you. What you need is somebody who will treat you with respect. You know, I had a great father. In 1944, he created this congressional seat. And he wrote the blueprint for social justice, for political activism. He fought the power. Unfortunately, too many politicians nowadays, they don't fight the power. They're happy to go along to get along. You know, go to a political club here or there. If you have a title, they will listen. If you don't have a title, good luck. You know, my father fought the power. That's what we need. I understand that, you know, congressional seats are about legislation, bringing money, but we also need to fight. We need to use this as a bully pulpit. And if there's a street light on Lexington Avenue on 102nd Street that's somewhat broken, that's a danger to seniors, this congressman is going to fight for that street light to be repaired. Thank you all. God bless you. Buenas noches. Que Dios lo bendiga. Gracias.
Tony Evans.
Thank you to the AARP for having me, and I will say that this debate is going to continue, because on June 28th, when the Democrats select from this very crowded field, the Democratic nominee will face from me a strong challenge. And just like some of you didn't like everything I had to say, and some of you wanted to boo me, so have some of the people in the Republican Party. And the reason they do that is because I will stand up and I will speak truth to power. I don't have to be loved every day, because leadership means seeing and recognizing what's ahead and helping people prepare for that. And I don't think that you can do that if you are a professional politician. I'm not sure where you go to study to be a professional politician. I've had a life. I've had to pay workers and fire workers. I've had to pay taxes and borrow one from my 401k to send my kids to college. I think we need those kinds of real experiences in our next congressperson, and I look forward to continuing this conversation until November 8th.
Guillermo Linares.
Thank you for having this forum. In moments of crisis, you need to really show leadership and mobilize the community to address that. That's what I did when I was in Northern Manhattan as a teacher, mobilize parents and the community when we had the most overcrowding district in the city of New York, and I led the effort to bring 9 brand new schools to address that crisis. That's what happened in Washington Heights and North Manhattan when we had one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the city of New York, and I helped bring, as a city councilman, a new police precinct and brought the community together to make it one of the safest neighborhoods. Right now, we have a crisis where we're being displaced. We need to mobilize our community. Tenemos que movilizar a nuestra comunidad para quedarnos en nuestro vecindario. Alguien que tiene experiencia movilizando comunidad y trayendo la atención del gobierno, en este caso federal, es Guillermo Linares. Muchísimas gracias y espero su apoyo.
We want a change in our community. We need to have a change in the community. En nuestra era, la era de la mujer, como mujer latina, defenderé nuestros derechos, defenderé el seguro social, defenderé affordable housing, defenderé la educación, que es lo primordial. Nuestros niños son nuestro futuro. Si no peleamos por ellos, no tendremos un buen futuro. Somos una gran nación de inmigrantes. Necesitamos tenerlo. Cero deportación. Gracias.
Michael Gallagher.
So this is a big moment in political life here. After 46 years, you are going to choose a new congressperson to represent this district. People may tell you, and you may think that you need to select somebody with more political experience, but I disagree. But if you feel that way, you have your choice of people who have done time here in Albany and Washington as candidates that you can select. It is your choice who will lead. This is not an inheritance. It's not an anointment. We are here to pick the future leadership for our district, and I ask for your vote on June 28th. We live in a time and place where values property over people, and that has to change. I am from this community. I refuse to accept that. Tax policy is where the things that matter to us need to be determined, and it needs to be determined for working people like you and me, and I'm here to defend us. So I appreciate your being out tonight. I thank you all for listening, and I look forward to voting day, June 28th. I hope you select me. Thank you.
Adriano Espaillat.
I hope you heard some of the ideas and the platform that I presented to you. Gentrification has cast a deep shadow already in Harlem and East Harlem. It's creeping up like a tsunami up to Washington Heights, Inwood, and the Northwest Bronx. I will fight unmitigated, unrestrained development, keep the density of our neighborhoods. I will bring affordable housing and preserve affordable housing and capital dollars for NYCHA. We didn't speak about education. I will bring funding for Title I, and I will bring funding for Title II dual language programs. And on day 1, the Bronx will have a district office. Nosotros estamos aquí para decirle que vamos a enfrentar el desplazamiento, que vamos a traer recursos para la creación y la preservación de vivienda asequible, que vamos a tratar de traer fondos para la escuela del título 1, título 2, y que el primer día vamos a tener una oficina de constituyentes en el Bronx. El 28 de julio es para allá que vamos.
Heath Wright.
If you notice, none of us really disagree on issues. We all have the same philosophy, but let's make sure what we're doing. Let's not lose sight. We're sending a legislator to Congress to legislate with 434 other people from across the United States of America. Now, I have legislated And I've been successful. I want to bring the great things that we've done to New York to the United States of America, whether it's paid family leave, whether it's upping the minimum wage. These are things that we have done. And I want to bring this to the United States of America as a whole. We've done some great things. Now, our seniors need to be treated with dignity, caring, and respect. So that's why I ask that you look at my candidacy. I would love to ask for your support for my candidacy, ask you to do the right thing, make the right choice, and do the right thing on June the 28th, electing Keith Wright to Congress. Thank you so very much.
And that essentially wraps up tonight's forum. First, I'd like to thank all of the candidates for joining us this evening, as well as this wonderful, boisterous, opinionated audience. On behalf of Channel 7, I would just like to say it was our honor to be here tonight. Part of our mission, we believe, is to help educate the community and inform the community about issues that are important to them. And I hope that by listening to each of the candidates on the issue tonight, we have helped you as you try to make a choice about who you will cast your vote for on June 28th. So thank you very much for allowing us, Channel 7, to be a part of the evening.